4:37 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, BTC at $120,000, right? And it is on Coinbase, okay? 120K on Coinbase. So let me make sure the sound is good, because I haven't gone for a live stream for nearly 3 months. So the streaming software is a bit lagging. So if I run into some difficulties, so just understand why, okay? So let me know if the sound is good before I dive into the analysis. So we got Quiet Cook in the house. We got a crypto moon boy in the house. All right, so 25K and came back down, and try to close below 107. But what we've been saying in our premium group was like, it is most likely, okay, impossible for bulls to let price close below the 107K. So that's why we stayed bullish all along the Q3, right? However, the main thing was like to be patient and wait for the Q4 to start with some bullishness, okay? And we will take a look at it on. You should have been watching over the last 3 months was like 107, 108K zone, okay? And whenever we retested the 108, 107 zone, bulls showed up, defended the support zone, and then price action, reversed, okay? So now the another higher time frame to keep an eye on is like the 6-month time frame. Most people don't talk about it, but it has been a silent bull market for BTC. As you can see, since like the bottom in 2022, we discussed it back then when BTC was around like a 20K to 18K. If you buy anywhere around like 180 to 16, if you buy anywhere around like a 18K to 16K, you got a potential 10x move for the then 16K to 18K, okay? So it has been a very, very smooth bull market, if and only if you traded the macro basis, right? And you can see like no bearish 6-month cycle whatsoever over the last nearly 3 years. So so the macro for B. So now let's take a look at how it closed, right? Refused to close below the quarterly open. You can see like the 4-month cycle, if we run up into any pressure about like a pushing above like a 125 to 130 zone, right? Good stuff, okay? For whatever reason, we get some rejection around 125 to 130 zone, and then come back down before the end of the year, right? And retest the 107, 108. You just have to remember what happened back in last quarter and be like, okay, we have to defend this area of 108, 109 zone. For whatever reason, I'm not saying that's what we're going to get, but for whatever the crypto regulation, if we get some bad news, war, inflation, recession, it doesn't matter. Whatever we get, just think about it. The 107 up to a 109 zone still going to be a strong support, right? Till we get some bearish confirmation for the bear market, right? The bear market will come. However, it is not even time to talk about it, right? But at some point we will get 1 to 2 bearish 6-month cycle, and we have to be mentally. So let me take a look at the chart room to make sure everything is smooth. The volume low, okay? Let me increase the volume. So I might need to talk louder for Quiet Cook. So let me know if the volume is good now. I haven't gone for a live stream for a while, so all these kind of choppy. I'm sorry, man. Okay, so I think we just have to go through the live stream, and then I'm gonna potentially make another short video update just to recap everything. All right, hopefully it'll be smoother. So sorry for the people don't talk about it, right? One thing I'm only concerned when I think back in March 2024, and then we ended up moving like a sideways for like the next 4 to 6 months. However, even though it has risen some questions, right? It it is the end of the cycle, right? So we might not have time to be moving sideways for the next like a 4 to 6 months, right? Even though most people are predicting like the cycle could go all the way up into like a Q2, Q3, 2026. I don't know about that, okay? It is possible, but I will just respect what we have seen and what we have analyzed at the bottom. Okay, when BTC was around like a 16K to 18K, right? We said it is a good time to buy for the next 3 years, and then once that time frame is completed, it will be a good time to sell. Okay, whether we're gonna go up into, dip into like a 2026 or not, that is a different topic. Okay, but all I know is like market doesn't have like a BTC doesn't have enough time, right? All right, it seems like my connection was gone. So that's why we had the interruption. So let me make sure everything is good before we continue the live stream. I think everything is good, right? So yeah, it's working now. Okay, so I think it was the internet that went off. Okay, but now let's go ahead and take a look at the monthly cycle. Okay, so when we take a look at the monthly cycle, the takeaway is like for the monthly, one thing we just have to remember is like the monthly 2-1 EMA. Right now it is almost at 90K, and we discussed it back when BTC was around like a 50K right here. We said, by the time we, break below the monthly 2-1 EMA, it'll be, the monthly 2-1 EMA could be above like 100K, right? So right now we almost at 90K. So within the next like a 2 to 3 months, it could be above like 100K, and BTC could be well above like 130, 140 if we continue the uptrend. So just keep an eye on the monthly 2-1 EMA. Breaking below it, closing below it, it will come from the bear market. Okay, but we have a long way to go before we even like retest the monthly 2-1 EMA. Yeah, the probability to retest it in October is actually very, very low. I would say like a less than 5% or even like a 3% to drop all the way down to like a 87, 88K this month. Okay, even though we're moving up in a low volume since like the last year, I mean, it is pretty normal. It is the last phase of the bull market, and then once we get the euphoria phase, right, volume could be coming in, and then later on the volume could spike up to the upside, right, potentially a red volume, right, and then the bear market could basically start after that, right? But it is just, I'm just speculating regarding how it is, how it'll play out, but we will see. The main thing is like we're way above the monthly 2-1 EMA. Okay, so now let's take a look at BTC on 3 weeks time frame. So on the 3 weeks time frame, what I've noticed is like we repeating the same process in terms of like an indicator, the same pattern we had in 2023, right there in Q4. If you take a look at the double top double bottom, I discussed it back then, right? If you guys recall when I said with the double top double bottom right here, if we break above $30,300, we're most likely going up to like a 45 to a 50K zone. Okay, and that's exactly what happened. If you notice, well, we basically printing the same exact pattern Okay, it is not a very frequent pattern to catch all the time, but whenever you see them, right, you just have to respect them, especially on the bullish side. You know, double top, double bottom, you're expecting BTC to potentially go much higher over the next like a few weeks, similar to what happened right here. Okay, when everyone was calling for, you know, 16K, 14K, and all that good stuff, right? Basically, sucker went up to like a, you know, nearly 125K after that, right? So a beautiful pattern. We had one also right here. Okay, on the 50-day cycle. Reason why we were so bullish when BTC was around like a, you know, the low 70s, it was because of the double top, double bottom right here. You know, everyone was expecting BTC to drop down to the 30s and all that good stuff. We said, okay, nope. On the 50-day cycle, we got a nice bullish pattern. Most people probably don't pay attention to the 50-day cycle, so they wouldn't basically catch it. Okay, so that's the third time we're getting it. In this cycle, we got two on the 3-week cycle and one on the 50-day cycle, right? So so speaking of the 50-day cycle, it is looking good. If you take a look at it in terms of candles, in terms of like a structure, right? You know, it is a nice breakout. Okay, the likelihood to close below, let's say 110, 108 at the same time, right, on the 50-day cycle is very low. Okay, so most likely going to be closing above 117 or higher. I don't know how it'll close, but you know, it is a nice cycle to keep an eye on for the next like a few days, because we're going to get the next cycle in let's say October 28th. Okay, so, and we know most of the time October 28th we tend to get what, a very October 27th or 28th, depending on the year. Okay, similar to what we had right here back last year, back in 2024. If you guys recall, we discussed it, right? We said by October 27th, 28th, right? By October, between 27th, 28th of October, right? We could be getting a breakout, and you can see like candle open and broke out to the upside from like, let's say 67K all the way up to 104. Okay, in 50 days. Okay, so so let's see, this candle could do the same. It could pump a 50%. It could give us a 50% move. I don't know, right? If not, the next candle, which is going to open in 3 weeks, just about like 3 weeks, right, and some change, could basically get the job done. So the takeaway is like, you know, the next 70 to 80 days, right, could be very bullish, you know, for BTC, right? And then after that, usually like, you know, December 17th, December 18th, we tend to get some shakeouts. So, you know, I'm just trying to give you guys some heads up. You know, if you are extremely bullish going into end of the year, you know, just be cautious, because, you know, we could start to see some sell-off in early December, right? So now let's go ahead and take a look at BTC on a weekly basis. So when we take a look at BTC on the weekly, it resembled the 2020 breakout, September 2020 breakout. I discussed it in multiple videos update, right, in my premium group. If you take a look at it back in 2020, right, most of you guys recall, right? Remember, like after we dropped from like a 12,000, right, to like a 10K, most people were waiting for BTC to drop down to like a 9,400 right here, right there, Leroy, right there. Okay, so they were waiting for an extra, let's say 5%, less than 5% move, right? 94, 9,500 area. And then what I was saying back then was like, just let's respect the weekly 21 EMA, right? We retested the weekly 21, you know, and then bounce off of it in a, you know, 2 weeks breakout from like, let's say 10K to roughly around like 11K. And the following 2 weeks, we dumped back down to retest the weekly 21 EMA, right? And then broke out to the upside after that. So I discussed it like, you know, right after we dropped the first week of September right here to retest the weekly 21 EMA, right? the first week of September, what I was saying was like, just be prepared. If we pump up, if we get the pump up, right, and then retest the weekly 21 EMA, similar to what happened back in 2020. And if you notice well, that's exactly what we did, what we have done, right? Dump back down to the weekly 21, got back-to-back bullish candle, and then in a 2 weeks time frame, dump back down to retest the weekly 21, and then later on, breaking out now to the upside. Okay, so BTC is repeating the same thing, same pattern all over the place. Sometimes you just have to be able to catch those patterns, right? And all that good stuff. Sometimes you might be lucky, sometimes you might be, you might not be lucky to catch those patterns, right? But the takeaway is like, the weekly 21 held well as support. However, our only downside criteria is like the weekly MACD is negative. Okay, so and price action is now nearly above all-time high in terms of like a closing basis. That is not a good, it is not a good news, okay, in a short to medium term, right? It is a bearish setup, right? Because you don't want price action to go up above all-time high while you got a negative momentum. So it is a strong divergence. However, let me take a look at the chat room first. We got Mr. Q in the house. Thanks a lot for tuning in, man. So I guess everything is good, right? So make sure to hit the likes if you haven't done so, right? So basically, it is a bearish divergence, okay? We cannot basically ignore it, right? So we can ignore it. However, if we take a look at the lower time frame, okay, such as the 5D. Let's take a look at the 5D, right? So if you take a look at the 5D, it is behaving as it did, right, back in April, right, 2021. And you're gonna be like, why April 2021? You take a look at back in April 2020, April 21st, okay, 2025, not 2021. So April 2025, right? We did have a nearly 10,000 point pump, right, when we broke out above the 2020 EMA on the 5D, consolidated for two candles, basically 10 days, before getting another $10,000 pump, right? So we could get something similar, right? Since like we haven't yet gotten a 5D MACD, a positive 5D MACD, right? It could consolidate to allow the MACD to flip positive for the next like a 1 or 2 candle. I don't know. It could be 1 or it could be 3. I don't know. But for a few candles before giving us, another continuation to the upside. So what I'm trying to say is like a $10,000 move on the 5D over the last few months, right, has been very, very critical, okay, in terms of like a moving to the upside, right? Basically critical for bears, not for bulls, right? So I wouldn't basically be bearish on this $10,000 point move, okay? It is very, very bullish, even though the MACD is not positive yet, okay? So so you take a look at it right here as well. When did we get the $10,000? When did we get the MACD to cross positive? After we pumped $10,000 and moved sideways for like 10 days, right? So right here, we could see something similar, unless, okay, BTC repeat what it did right here, okay, where we basically just get back-to-back, $10,000 move. Back in November 2024, we pumped from like 69K to 80K, right? In 5 days, right? $10,000, $11,000 actually, okay? And then later on, the following candle, we pumped from 80K, all the way up to like 91K, give or take. So the takeaway is like, if we close this current 5D candle, I think we're not going to close this candle above like 125, right? Because we got like 2 hours to go, right? So very, very low probability to close the candle above like a 125, but anything is possible. Okay, if we close above 125 within the next 2 hours, right? Yes, it could basically pump another 10,000 point or even 15,000 point after that, right? But you know, the takeaway is like just be mindful, just in case we move sideways for the next like, you know, for the next 10 days, right? Just till mid-October, right? It won't change anything regarding the bullishness. It is still going to be bullish, right? If we move sideways, okay? It kind of looked similar to what we had right there back in January, also January 2024, the sideways correction between 50K to a 40K zone, right? The MACD was still not positive, okay? We needed to break out above the 50K zone, right? Before get and consolidate it for, we actually needed to break out above the 50K zone, okay? All the way up to 53 before getting a positive MACD. So I wouldn't be worrying too much regarding the 5D MACD, okay? But one thing we should be looking at in the short to medium term within the next like a couple of days or even today, right? It is going to be the 3D MACD. Okay, so if you take a look at the 3D MACD, we discussed it back in early July. If you guys recall, one of the reasons why I was so bullish right there, right, regarding the breakout above 108, 110 zone was like the 2D and 3D MACD, right? They were both crossing positive. Okay, yes, they crossed positive, and then we pump up to like a 123, 125K zone, and then got rejected. And now we're getting another U-turn regarding the MACDs, right? On the 2D, right? And the 3D. The 3D has not yet crossed positive yet, but if it does, it could, excuse me, it could confirm the breakout, and we could be looking for the upper level trend line over the next like a few weeks, right? So the resistance trend line, right, started since like a March 2024 around like a 73K, which was the previous all-time high, and then we retested it again around like a 110, give or take, right? And we could be retesting it somewhere around like a, you know, anywhere between 160 to 180, right? K Leroy, okay? 160 to 180. If we pump all the way up to that level this month, it'll be somewhere around like a 160. But if we move sideways, right, and all that good stuff and get there around November, it'll be like a 170, 180, right? So the takeaway on the 3D, keep an eye on the 3D MACD. If it crosses positive, right, bulls could be in total control for the next like, you know, 60 to 70 days. Why 60 to 70 days? Because we talk about it on the 50-day cycle, right? The next cycle will open around like a, October 27th, October 28th, right? And then it'll close by December 16th, December 17th, right? So that should cover the entire quarterly cycle, right? So that's the takeaway on the 3D. So now let's take a look at the 2D basis. So before we talk about the 2D basis, let me take a look at the chat room once again. So I think everything is good, right? So when we take a look at the 2D basis, it is basically the blueprint for the 3D, okay? Or you could say they're the same, right? Sometimes you can get an early signal on the 3D basis, which is what we got right here, okay? The 2D basis already flipped positive. However, the 3D basis is not yet. Oh, it is slightly flipping positive. So it should increase our probability, right, to see the trend going up higher over the next like a few weeks, right? Because we got a positive 2D. I was very excited at first, right? basically in early September when we got the bullish crossover right here. However, you know, bears showed up and give us another negative crossover. So, but I did not basically change my strategy, because I know at some point we will get what, a 3D MACD. So the 3D MACD was giving us a negative curvature, which I did not like, right? However, I just needed to respect it. Okay, I needed to respect it. However, at the same time, the quarterly was telling us like BTC most likely not going to close below 107. So even though we did have a negative curvature on our 3D showing a strong downward momentum, I was like, it is very, very unlikely, right? We're going to get that move before the end of September. Or even if we do, right? Or even if we did, it would have been a week and then price action would be pumping to the upside. Okay. But now the negative curvature has faded away on the 3D. On the 2D, you know, things are looking juicy unless we get another negative curvature, which is not very, very probable as of now. You take a look at the RSI above the resistance trend line, looking pretty good, but it's not going to be like that. Okay, so expect some you know, some sideways-ish movement, right, along the way. Okay, so it you know, everything is looking good. All right, the only thing we should have some concern about is like the weekly MACD, right? But if the 3D MACD flips positive, we should that should basically that should take care of the weekly time frame. Okay, the weekly MACD. Okay, and would even take care of the 5D MACD, right? So the immediate indicator, the immediate action I'm looking for the 3D MACD is like just to flip positive. That's it for the next like a couple of days potentially, and then we could see some fireworks, you know, for the rest of the quarter. Okay, so now let's take a look at the daily. So the daily, in terms of the daily, I wouldn't care about any of these indicators. The only thing I would look for in terms of the daily time frame, it is going to be in terms of like an Elliott wave, right? You know, we discussed it in my premium group, right? It is one pattern, you know, I'm very familiar with, right? It is a double top, double bottom, right? And another double top, double bottom on top of that. I like to call it a doublet, okay? Because you got two of them back to back. So when we were coming down to retest the support 112, 113, 111, I was saying like it is a buy zone, okay? The deepest we might drop could be like 107, 108, because I did not expect like BTC to close below that level. So, you know, we were just accumulating on the downtrend and just being patient, because we know sometimes market will shake you out for multiple weeks before giving you the big move. So you just need to be patient sometimes with these moves, okay? I know some of these moves are very scary sometimes when BTC drops $10,000, $15,000, but if you're looking for a $40,000 move, $50,000 move, you got to be able to hold for at least a $7,000 drop, okay? Or like, or even 10,000 if you're looking for a $15,000 move, okay? But in terms of wave analysis, if you take a look at it, you know, we did print an A, B, and C, another A, B, and C, right? So now, what is the most probable, you know, the most probable outlook, okay? It is to print another potential five-way structure to the upside. And we already got one right here, okay? We already got our wave one, which basically did not break below the, you know, the our wave 2 actually, okay, which basically did not break below the 107 zone, right? So so if we do a 1.618 extension of wave 1 in a short to medium term, that could send us somewhere around like a 125 to 126 K zone, right? Depending on how accurate you want to draw it, right? But that's close enough, okay? 125, 126, 127. That is going to be the level to look out for, right? For a potential sideways-ish correction you know, or it could even break above it, go all the way up to like an extension 2. But you know, just to be level-headed, just keep an eye on 125, 126, 127 zone for a you know, some checkouts, for some checkouts basically. Okay, and that could even give you more another, you know, another high low before going to the upside potentially. Okay, but that's just the short term. That it doesn't have anything to do with the macro on the monthly, quarterly, and all that good stuff. Because on a quarterly basis, we could pump all the way up to like 160 to 180. So this move, right, just have to be very, very cautious. It might not be a bearish setup where you're going to be looking for a dump. Okay, or you know, it could just be a flag and then a continuation. Okay. All right, so I think we covered everything. It's almost like a 40 minutes of live streaming and all that good stuff. So that could sum up the Q4 analysis, and we will see what we're going to get by December. So I might do another, you know, macro update by you know, by December, depending on how market will look like. So so let me check the chat room to see if you guys have any questions. And by the way, I'm running a 50% discount. If you guys want to join the premium group, send me a, you know, a direct message on Telegram or on Discord. Both of those links in the description if you're looking to join some premium group, right? To finish off strongly the bull market, be ready for the bear market, and you know, at the same time anticipate the next bull trend and all that good stuff. Because if you've been watching me long enough, you know we've been spot on, you know, ever since like BTC was around like a 50k area, like 50 to 60k back in 2021, right? You know, we called for the entire, you know, bear market. We were super accurate on the entire, regarding the entire bear market, you know, called for the accumulation around like a 19k to 16k zone, and said do not wait for 14k. Most bears were waiting for 14k, 13k, and all that nonsense. We said you could potentially be looking for a 10x move over the next 36 months, and we closer to a 10x move than a 14k and a 15k zone. Okay. Okay, so Mr. Moonboy says, what is your thought on alt season? So alt season, very, very critical, to be honest with you, right? I want to see alt season, but I want to see alt initiate, you know, their own alt season. So unlike 2020 and 2021, the patterns were there against BTC, right? I could have basically take a look at alt BTC pairs, you know, and see their bullishness, right? And be very confident some of them were going to move like a 10, 20x, right? But, you know, if you take a look at the current cycle, alt BTC pairs, as of now, they still not giving us like a strong bullish pattern. Okay, this doesn't mean like they're not gonna pump. All I'm trying to say is like alt, you know, BTC pairs, they still not that bullish. Okay, they can still pump to the upside, right? But you know, I just don't see like a lot of bullish alt BTC pairs. Okay, that's why I'm only basically looking at alt USD recently, right? So, and you know, to anticipate some, you know, to anticipate the alt season, you know, we kind of got like a good news last month. Actually, back in August, right? Okay, we closed below the monthly 21 EMA. It was a good news, right? However, we still haven't seen yet, you know, a strong reaction regarding alt, right? So we don't know if BTC will give us a 50% pullback or 100% pullback. If we get 100% pullback, that could change the cycle. Okay, I'm not saying we will get a, you know, an extended cycle or any of that, right? What I'm saying is, like, if BTC goes back up to like a 65%, I mean the BTC dominance, right, goes back up to 65%, while BTC going up to like 150, 160, right, that could delay the entire 4-year cycle. Okay, I'm not saying it will. It is just my speculation, but we will see. However, if we get, you know, the BTC dominance to pump back up 50%, okay, up to 62, 61%, and then capitulate down, while BTC USDT is pumping up to 150, 160, 180, and stuff like that, yes, we could get a strong alt season. So it all depends on the BTC price action, right? And the BTC dominance, of course, okay? But one thing we don't want to see is like this guy pumping to the upside, going all the way up to like a 65, 70%, and BTC USDT dumping below 100K. We don't want to see that. That could change the entire market structure, right? So, and it has a very low probability, okay? That scenario has a very low probability of taking place, basically, okay? Where we see like the BTC dominance going up to like a 70%, and BTC USDT dumping below 100K, stuff like that. That means like alt will get super wrecked. Okay. So that's my take on alt season. We just have to wait for them to initiate it, and then we will basically follow through. Otherwise, it's not very exciting to talk about alt as of now. Okay, BNB above 1,000. So if you're holding BNB, you're good. You don't have anything to worry about. BNB, could hit like a 2,500 to 3,000, stuff like that. Okay, but anything above 1,500 will be highly risky to hold, right? Stuff like that, right? So and we had this setup like for the longest, okay, for BNB. So let's take a look at VET USDT for Quiet Cook. VChain USDT, it has a nice setup, right? Similar to Dogecoin, similar to Chainlink, right? Similar to Shiba. Why? Because they all printed a double top, double bottom on a monthly basis. So the probable move for VChain is like, to at least get this triple top around the 0.07, 0.08, right? So, but first thing first, need to take out the monthly 21 EMA, and then, we will see, we will see after that, okay? So, but if it fails, it has to hold the bottom. If it failed to get the breakout right here, if we break the bottom, that could look ugly. Okay, it could look ugly, right? But since like BTC is breaking out to the upside, could print a new all-time high, VChain could take advantage of the market momentum, similar to what happened back in November 2024. And could give you an easy 3 to 4x move, depending on the volatility. And you don't want to hold it around this area, especially late in this cycle, around 13 cents, 15 cents. Just suck it up and get out. Because if the bear market starts, it could take another 4 to 5 or 6 years before you see like those gains again, right? Let's see. Caro, whatever. Can you check Dogecoin? You're welcome, Quiet Cook. Caro is asking for the King Dogecoin. So for Dogecoin, if you've been following our channel long enough, or even in our like a public Telegram group, I said it back in 2022, okay, and 2023 when Dogecoin was around like a 5 cent, 6 cent in our premium. That's where we basically got in right here for Dogecoin. Okay, 5 cents, 6 cents. I was like, this is it. That's the bottom for Dogecoin. Most likely we're not gonna break it for the rest of the cycle, and it hasn't. Okay, and now even though it's not outperforming BTC, it's doing pretty well. If you bought around like 5 cents, 6 cents, 7 cents, and been holding for over the last 2-3 years, you know, you're still up plenty. Okay, like 4x. Okay, and it has gone up even like a 8x, right, in this cycle. So the next level of resistance for Dogecoin is like, you know, all-time high. If you bought around this area and you're still holding, right, you don't want to be too greedy above anywhere around like an all-time high. Even though it can go all the way up to 150, right, $1 to 150, I don't recommend any longer, okay, to hold it above all-time high. Why? Because BTC did not break all-time high at the first retest. Ethereum did not break all-time high, you know, at the first retest, right? You take a look at BNB did not break all-time high, right? The first retest. So I don't see why Dogecoin will. Okay, you take a look at BNB similarly, did not break all-time high when we came back to retest the all-time high. Okay, take a look at BTC, did not break all-time high, give us a bull flag. So I don't see why Dogecoin will just crush above all-time high, even though it is possible. But the probability for the macro cap, for the probability for Dogecoin to repeat what the macro cap have done, right, is very, very high. Okay, even though it can do something different. Okay, but right now it's not time to be, it is really not time to be greedy. Okay, it is not time to be looking for excessive profits. It is time to be prepared for the next bear cycle. Time to, maximize, not losing anything, not maximize profit, but try to not basically lose gains, right? Some of these gains, if you bought Dogecoin right here, even take some profit, add on to the weekly 21 and all that good stuff, right? Mr. Q is saying not time to buy, time to get out. It depends what you're holding. If you're holding a, let's say, like a, let's say AXS, right? If you're holding AXS, yes, it's not time to get out. Okay. If you're holding Link, right, and you accumulate it right here, right, just about like a $5, $7 area, right? Yes, you might reduce your exposure, okay, or wait for near all-time high to just, reduce exposure. So the timing is because of the timing. It's not just like because of the price, right? But it's because of the timing. Time is, very, very sensitive as of now. Okay. So you take a look at Solana, first retest of all-time high, did not break it. So, I just don't know why Dogecoin, if you asked me 2 years ago if Dogecoin would have, would basically break above all-time high, I would say yes, right? But after getting all this data on BNB, Ethereum, BTC, Solana, you would expect Dogecoin to do the same, okay, not break all-time high. Okay. All right, it is almost 50 minutes. So now let's take a look at the USDT dominance, right? So the USDT dominance could affect alt season as well, okay? It is in a descending triangular formation, and just the end of the triangular formation right here, if we break below the support zone, that could send us down to like a low 2%. And that's what we want to see, right? If we, if we want to basically, if we want to see alt season, we want to see the USDT dominance to capitulate below 3.8%. Okay, So if you take a look at it on a quarterly basis, it is super bearish. It is super bearish. Okay, below the quarterly 21, it could definitely take out the 3.8%, and that could send us once again down to the 2% right here, right where we bottom at back in 2021. Okay, because we got the big dump, in May, May 2021. So, but we'll just take a step by step. Let's just take out the 3.8% first, and that could give us a strong signal to move much lower, and then we could see Alt moving much higher. On a daily basis, it is a support right now with the high lows and the inverse head and shoulder. I did not fall for the inverse head and shoulder right here, because of the quarterly basis for BTC USDT, right? And we talked about it at the beginning of the video, right? The BTC USDT most likely not wouldn't close below 107. So even though it did have an inverse head and shoulder, was scarily bullish, right? However, it failed. Okay, now it is coming back down to print a higher low, and we just need to break it. Now, if you get some sideways correction right here, it means like BTC will also pull back. Okay, if the USDT dominance slightly pull back up, it means BTC will pull back down. Okay, just to cool off, and that could send us back to what we said regarding the 5D, where we could see, a couple of candles potentially, not guaranteed, right, of sideways correction on the 5D cycle, which is going to be 10 days total or even longer before the next leg up. But we cannot lose the current 5D candle within the next 5 days. That's going to be brutal. Okay, if we see, like, let's say the next candle open around like 120, and we get an engulfing candle to wipe out all the gains to dump back down to 109, 108, that could be brutal in a short to medium term. Right? Why? Because you have to zoom out again, right? On a 4-month cycle, we discussed it. The 4-month cycle open, around like a 107, 108. So we cannot close below it. So even if we wipe out the 5D cycle right here, it could be brutal in a short to medium term, but it is very probable it will be basically pushed back up. Okay, and you have to watch at the same time the fear and greed index. I discussed it in my premium group the last couple of weeks when the fear and greed index was around like a 40. What I said was like, if we hit the low 30s, right, or anywhere between like mid 30s, that could be the bottom, especially like a BTC hitting support again. So you have to watch the fear and greed index. If we dump back down, let's see, if we dump back down to the 109, 108 zone within the next 5 days, right, the fear and greed index could dump below 30. Okay, because a lot of people will be panicking, and then this guy could be just going for a reaccumulation. But I don't see that happening as of now. But if we see it, you should know how to react. Basically, that's what I'm trying to say. Because you're not going to see me when BTC dump, right? So let's take a look at compound. So comp USDT, a bit similar to VChain, right? So I mean, it is a nice pattern, right? With a double top, double bottom right here, right? You would be expecting this move, okay, to the upside. The only problem is like you just don't know when that move will come. Okay, it could come this month, it could come next month, or it could come later on. I don't know. Okay, but the only thing you got right here on a macro basis since like July 2022 is like you know, a nice accumulation phase. Okay, so as long as it stays below below, as long as it stays above the bottom, right, below just about like a $30 or lower, right, you know, it could still be under accumulation, right? And if you do a swing low to swing high, so 0.618 will be around like, you know, $200, give or take, to 228, right? And you know, 0.786 around like a 420, 424, give or take, right? So directionally it looks good, right? But you just don't want to do this. If it breaks below $30, that could look ugly, very, very ugly, right? All right, guys, so I'm just gonna call it a day, and we'll go for another live stream potentially before end of the year to just summarize the you know, the end of the quarter and the 2026 outlook and all that good stuff. So once again, if you want to join the premium group, link in the description. I'm running a 50% discount. We do weekly update, monthly update, private updates, and all that good stuff. So you get, you know, a weekly update every Sunday or Monday, depending on the volatility. You get a monthly update, you know, quarterly outlook, you know. So if you like those swing trades, you know, you want to take advantage of the you know, the 50% discount. All right, guys, thanks a lot for watching.